and welcome to Fraud Busting Neo-Fraus podcast. It is the only podcast for female fraud professionals and their allies who want to stay on top of the fraud awareness spectrum in order to thrive professionally while maximizing their happiness and having the courage to create the life they love. Thank you for listening.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the new episode of the Neo-Fraus podcast. Today, we have a special guest, which is Sonja Renee, and she's here today to share important message with the audience and talk a little bit about her very, very important and valuable book that she's written. But without further ado, I'd like to give Sonja the floor. Hi, Sonja.
Hi, how are you today?
I am doing wonderful, and thank you so much for making the time to interview with us today. I'd like to quickly jump into our conversation and ask you first to share with the audience a little bit about yourself, who you are and what you do.
Okay, great. Well, I'm Sonja Renee. I am a mom of three and a grandmother of one beautiful great grandson. And I am a speaker and author. And I speak about the invisible wound that leaves us emotionally hurt, which is abandonment trauma. And through awareness and personal development, I help people bounce back to living with their most amazing life. So and when I was 49 years old, I found out that I was adopted by accident. And so that took me on a deep dive to get some answers as to why I was never told and what were the details surrounding my adoption. My mother who raised me passed away when I was 28 years old. So the only person I had to go to was my father, and he was not very open with giving some answers at the time because he was in shock that I found out. So, having the conversations with my father and other family members, and then also getting to know my birth family, which was really great. They were very open and inviting and welcoming to me on both sides. I have two sisters by my birth mother, and by my birth father. I am the only child. He never had any other children. So he was elated to find out he had a daughter and grandchildren and a great grandchild. And so with all of that, it really made me start to examine my relationships because my birth mother was not ready to get to know me, which I understood because now she had to deal with healing from the traumas that she had surrounding this moment in time as well when I was born. So I gave her that grace to do so. But what I didn't realize was in doing so and not being in communication with her, I felt abandoned by the same person twice, which was my birth mother. So I said, you know what? Let me go on a journey of healing that because I didn't want to feel like I needed to have that connection in order for me to feel whole and complete. So I took on a journey to start doing the healing work, and I was journaling one morning and God spoke to me so clearly and said, write a book on abandonment. And I said, what? I don't know anything about abandonment because I only associated abandonment trauma with being needy or clingy, and I'm neither. However, I started writing the book, and I was like, God, you're just going to have to tell me what to write. And as I'm writing, I realized that there's other abandonment trauma wounds outside of being needy and clingy where I would overgive in a relationship. Because if you see my value, then you'll appreciate me and stick around. In my marriage, if my ex-husband was really doing some things that was really harming our relationship, I would threaten to leave, which is a manipulation tactic to make him do right. But you can't make a person do what a person's supposed to do. You can just let them be who they are and you decide if you want to participate in it. So with all of that and writing the book, what I realized was I started to examine my relationships, past and present, and how these wounds harness these relationships. So I did the healing work to heal these relationships, detach from the relationships that were not healthy for me, regardless of who the person is, and put that in my book of the type of relationships I had that harnessed these wounds, how I healed from these relationships, and now helping other people do the same. And now I'm also writing my second book, which is more so like a revision to put in more detail the types of wounds that there are, because it's a big umbrella for abandonment trauma. You have so many other wounds that are associated under the umbrella of abandonment, which is trust issues, depression, threatening to leave, overgiving, clingy, codependency. I mean, so many other wounds that are attached, and they're lying dormant in people, and they're not aware that they have these wounds until they're triggered. And even when they're triggered, they don't know why they're triggered because they haven't identified the wound, because they don't understand that the relationship that they're in is harnessing that wound. It's keeping them attached to that person. So my book is to say, okay, this is what's going on. So now people can have a blueprint of what to do, how to do it, so that they can heal and start to live their best life.
Thank you so much, Sonia, for sharing this information about your book and also your story. I think what you're doing is wonderful. And I personally find this as being a sort of a tool of eye-opening, right? Because as you mentioned, people may not be realizing some of the struggles that they have, some of the wounds that they have experienced. And that in itself is being sort of a blind spot in their life and preventing them from living their best life. So what you shared is definitely wonderful. And I will be sharing the link in this podcast to the audience to purchase your book and to get familiar even more with your tools that you're providing in there. I'd like to ask you this question. Did it take long for you to write your book? And how do you feel after you've written it and it's already out there for being purchased by people?
I wrote my book in 30 days. It only took me 30 days to put pen to paper because the emotions were just pouring out, the moments in time of the type of relationships I had, especially in the past, and how those relationships made me feel. It just all just started pouring out. And so I really, really dove into it, and I had the book written in 30 days, and then over the next couple of weeks it was published.
Wonderful, Sonia. That's definitely very, very impressive. So how do you feel? Do you feel joy and accomplishment after publishing the book?
Absolutely. Well, for starters, after I finished writing the book, I was in a wow factor moment for myself that I didn't even realize that I had these things lying dormant in me for so long. So that was a very big eye opener. And also, I was grateful that I took the time to write the book, because it also gave me the power to do the healing work. And I really felt more empowered. I feel like I took my power back. I felt more in control of my life. And I felt really good when the book was published and the first box came to my home. Oh, I was so excited. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm an author. And there's a little bit of nervousness sometimes because I was vulnerable in this book. I was very, very vulnerable and transparent about my personal life with the world. And I'm a private person. So being a private person and then being so open and vulnerable and transparent about my personal life and the challenges that I went through growing up, and even in my adult life with family, friends, and even in my marriage. I was married for 16 years. And so just seeing that come together and putting that out there for the world to see, it was a little like, oh my gosh, I don't know. But you know what? It's a part of my process, because I realized that God was showing me how to turn my pain into purpose.
Definitely impressive. Thanks so much for sharing. And you mentioned you're writing a second book, is that right? Tell us a little bit about that one.
So that one is more of a revision of the first book. So in the first book, I speak about the types of relationships that harness these wounds, but also, so now in the revision, adding on to, like I said, the different types of wounds that are under the umbrella of abandonment trauma. So here's the wound, and I have a detailed description of the wound, the types of relationships that harness the wound, so people can identify if that's the type of relationship that they're in, and then also steps of keys to take away of how to heal that wound. And because here's the deal, if you heal the wound, either you're going to heal the relationship or you're going to walk away from it. But either way, it gives you the strength and the power to disconnect from something that could be keeping you from living your most amazing life. And then it'll also have in there a call to action and a takeaway for the person to journal, because when they're journaling their journey and to see where they started and to see where they end up, because I'm all about the transformation.
That's absolutely amazing. And Sonja, just for the audience to share a little bit how to find your second book in the future, they would need to go to same, I guess if it's Amazon, same link with your first book, so that they could find your second one in the future. Is that right?
Yeah, yes and no. So you will be able to go to Amazon, but they'll give me a second link. Usually they'll have, if you go to my account, it'll show you the books that I have available, and you can just click on the one that you want. Also, with my website, my link to my website, it has the links on there, so they can just, when they click on that website link, when it opens up, it'll show them all the links, and the name of the book will be there. They can click on it, and it goes straight to Amazon, and they can purchase the book from there.
Thank
And
you
my
very
links
much.
associated.
Yeah, that's a wonderful information for our audience to be aware of how to find your books in the future and now your first book. And to conclude our wonderful conversation today, I'd like to ask you this question. What kind of advice you could provide to women out there and the audience, in general, on the topic of resilience, how to remain resilient through difficult moments in life?
You have to understand that how a person treats you says everything about them and nothing about you. And it's not your job to take on the accountability of other people's behaviors. It's not your job to fix people that you didn't break and problems that you didn't create. The only flower in the garden that you should water is you. It is okay to be selfish with yourself. It is okay to put yourself first. It is okay to set healthy boundaries for yourself and for other people so that you can maintain your peace. And that's how you stay resilient.
Thank you so much, Sonia. I think that's a really wonderful advice. Thanks for sharing your wisdom today with the audience. And thank you for attending this interview today. And thanks, everyone, for listening. Stay healthy and happy.